Notre Dame fans, welcome back to another edition of the Irish Breakdown podcast. My name is Bryan Driskell. I'm the publisher at irishbreakdown.com, and I'm joined today by our football analyst, Vince DeDario. So, Vince, I was able to catch you on a day where you don't have a game.
This is true.
Wanted to get your thoughts. I want to talk today. We're going to talk about some spring ball, but we want to focus on the defense. And we're going to focus on what we've seen from the highlights so far, and then some sort of things that we're hearing.
Yeah.
So I want to begin, Vince, by prefacing this with these are 3-minute highlight videos from 4 practices that are like an hour and a half long each.
Right.
So there's only so much we're going to get. But I think we've been doing this a long time, that I do think there's certain things that we look for in these videos that maybe aren't just like, oh, this guy threw a long pass. And those are the things that we're looking for. So we're going to talk about just general impressions, dive into some of the specific things that we're seeing that lead us to, give us at least a little bit of a tiny little glimpse into what Marcus Freeman is going to be doing defensively at Notre Dame. And then we'll kind of talk about some specific positions. So, Vince, you've broken down all 4 of the videos.
Yep.
You've watched them all. Just kind of share with us, just when we look at the defense, what are some of the things that you've noticed, just general impressions from what we've seen from these practice videos? And as you're talking, obviously we'll have these for those watching on YouTube. We'll have some practice videos rolling here as we go too. So go ahead, Vince, just kind of share some of the things that you're seeing from these practice videos.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, it has been, defensively, I feel like there hasn't been a drop-off. We're seeing the team fly around. We're seeing them get into the backfield, which I love. I mean, I see this team playing with a little bit more reckless abandon, I think, maybe than we've seen in the past. And I mean that in a good way, of course. I feel bad for Sibo Flemister. He's getting pounded in the backfield by this defense, it seems like, in the clips that we're able to watch. But no, the defense is everywhere. I mean, they're getting into the backfield. I like the coverage that I'm seeing from the safety position. The linebackers seem to be, you can tell that they're not thinking as much. They're more reacting from what they see, which is what you want from your linebackers. I've been very impressed with what we've seen overall from the defense. Again, it's these 3-minute videos from an hour and a half long practice. So you get what you can get from it. But what they're sharing with us, I really like what I see. We get a lot of 11 on 11 stuff in these videos, which you're seeing right now. But what I'm seeing really gets me excited for what this defense can be. That's for sure.
Now, Vince, we've also seen some interesting alignment. So things that we've seen from these practices, number one, we definitely have seen 3-3 looks, no question.
Yes. Straight 3 down, 3 linebackers. Yes.
Right. Now, what we've also seen are some differences from how they get there. And what I mean by that is we've seen it looks to be 3-3-5 type of personnel, but we've also seen 4-2-5 personnel, which for Notre Dame has been more of a 4-3 personnel, I guess is what I should say. 4-3 personnel. And I believe we've seen some clips of 3-4 personnel. Now, what that means is not that they line up in a 3-4, but it's essentially what the personnel is. 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers, 4 DBs. And so getting to your 3-3-5 alignment from a 3-4 personnel, meaning there's 3 linebackers sort of stacked, and then that rover type position, which we would assume would be a rover type, is also a linebacker.
Right.
So we're seeing a lot of different, and then of course we've seen pure 4-2-5 like we've seen in the past. So we're definitely seeing so far through just 4 practices, and that's, I guess, what surprised me and why it's worth talking about is we're 4 practices in and we've already seen all that. Right. And that tells me that being versatile is something that isn't just lip service to Marcus Freeman, and it's not just what he did at Cincinnati because he had to, but it's something he truly believes in.
And it's very early in spring practice, so the fact that he already is able to get a lot of those things in means it's very important. And you have to understand how coaches how they install their defense, their offense. The important stuff comes in first. The stuff that is going to be your identity is the stuff that goes in first. The stuff that goes in after that is kind of not the window dressing, but it's the extra, right? I mean, it's the stuff that comes off of your base stuff.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of the point that you were getting at, is like, that stuff is in right now.
The foundation
practice is in,
right?
That's going to be his foundation. And I think that's really important for people to understand. The foundational stuff is what goes in first. And we've already seen all the multiplicity of formations and things, even in these 3-minute videos. Because look, the reality is, if somebody wants to scout Notre Dame, they can get their hands on these 3-minute videos. Okay.
Right.
So it's not going to be.
No coach in America is making like because just knowing, well, they're 3-3-5. Oh no. Well, yeah, you saw that at Cincinnati. Right. They already have like 12 games worth of 34,
They're not hiding the fact that they're going to be multiple, is what I'm saying.
They've
like
said to your yes, exactly. I'm agreeing with that, because there are some people like, why are you giving away? Look, it's in the videos that they're made open to the public.
Right.
And it's things that they've seen, and it's things that they've said they're going to do. So it's not a surprise that there's another play of Shane Simon fill-in, which I've been encouraged by seeing a lot of that. But it's one thing to say it, Vince, and it's another thing to do it. And to your point, we're 4 practices in, all they're doing right now is laying the foundation. It is. They're just laying it nice. We're in Indiana, so we have basements, that nice, lower level concrete foundation. That's what they're laying. And that foundation is going to be made up of multiplicity, versatility, throwing a lot of different looks. We've seen them line up in 3-3 alignments and there's an example of it right there. From what I can tell, that's number 44, Devin Upau. He is a Viper. Look where he's attacking from. He's attacking from the second level.
That's right.
So, that's, again, it's another example of that's a different look. And I love it. It's so much harder to prepare for a team that's going to – because here's what Marcus Freeman's doing.
Explain that real quick, Brian, because I want people to understand the Viper is a defensive end. He's coming from the second level.
Right. Here's an example of a 3-down look. Right. So what that means is so when we talk about the Viper coming from the second level, defense is basically made into 3 levels, and it's kind of cheating because technically the corners are part of the second level, but we count them as the third level.
That's true.
But essentially the defensive line is the first level, and that could mean a linebacker's walked up at the line of scrimmage. He'd be part of that first level. And if a defensive lineman is lined up 4 or 5 yards off the ball, then technically he's on the second level. If he's playing over the slot, which we've seen Dalen Hayes do at times, that's the second level. So that's what it means. And so when we're seeing that him attack, and he was attacking behind one of the ends, it tells me that that's a 3-4 personnel, or it's a 4-down. It's a 4-down personnel, but they're showing a 3-down look. And to me, here's the interesting thing that we're kind of gathering. That's that 3-down look that we were showing. Let me get back to actually playing clips. Here's what I'm noticing. So we've listened to players, Bo Bauer, Xavier Watts, other players have talked about it. Brian Kelly kind of talked a little bit about it, but he was a little less focused on that. But they've talked about how much easier it is to learn. And then we come on this podcast, we're talking about how different and versatility is. Here's the difference. I've always been a believer, and I believe this offensively too. And we see this at Oklahoma, we see this at Ohio State, we see this at Clemson, we see this at Alabama. They're going to run a lot of the same concepts over and over and over again. There's not 95,000 different plays, and I would argue that Notre Dame carried, especially under Chip Long. I don't know about it this year, but under Chip Long, they carried a lot of offense in the games. Meaning, there's a lot of different plays that they can run.
Right.
Well, the only plays you have on your play sheet in games are stuff that you've practiced, right?
Right.
And so what they would do is there wasn't a ton of, even this year, for all the 12 and 13, there wasn't a ton of versatility to how Notre Dame lined up. There just wasn't. We talked about this last week, where the number 2 and number 3 tight ends didn't run as many routes and things like that. So there was a lot of versatility. There's a lot of packages and concepts and those types of things.
Right.
That's a lot more for players to learn. I'm a believer in run less stuff out of different looks.
Absolutely.
And that's what Oklahoma does. That's what Alabama does. That's what Ohio State does. That's what Clemson does. And Notre Dame, to me, has been so focused on having all these different calls, especially in the pass game, and these different checks and audibles and all this kind of stuff. And it at times can make you not, as a player, not react as quickly because you're thinking so much. And what we're seeing from Marcus Freeman is he is focused on the versatility. The different things they're doing are more of how are we going to line up? Where are we going to attack from? What are we going to show? 3-3 this play, 3-4 that play, 4-2-5 the next, nickel package. And then from those, sometimes we're in 4-2-5 personnel, sometimes we're in 4-3 personnel, sometimes we're in, and that matters because if you're in a 3-3 look with Isaiah Foskey lining up as one of your linebackers, that's going to look a lot different and give you a lot more options than when you're doing that and Isaiah Foskey's a down lineman and you have 3 linebackers in the field. And that's going to look a lot different if you have a 3-3 with 4 linebackers on the field compared to a 3-3 with 5 DBs on the field.
Yep.
And so the calls aren't going to change a ton, but who you're going to attack with is going to determine by who's on the field.
Right.
What that also does is when you mix up your personnel that way, then you can have more players that are, how do I say this? It's sort of their niche is going to be more focused, which is what a niche is, obviously, as opposed to, hey, in order to play, you have to know everything.
Right.
It's more of a, hey, you do this really well. So when we're in these looks, we can play you in these looks. Correct. Because you can do this thing very well. So it gives you more flexibility personnel-wise.
It gets different guys on the field, yeah.
Defensively, as a coordinator and as players, there's not as much to learn. But when you're looking at it from an offensive point of view, it looks like a lot of stuff. And that's what makes it challenging. And so you can run one pass concept out of 5 different combinations of personnel or a formation or alignment or whatever. And to the defense, they can't handle those all 5 the same way. Number one. Number two, there's not as many tells. Well, they run that play out of all types of different concepts. And then some alignments, they only run certain plays, and other alignments, they run certain plays. But when you get down to it, you have to prepare for a lot of different things. And I think we're seeing that defensively as well, where Marcus Freeman is focused on showing defenses or offenses a lot more stuff pre-snap and not making the players have to think as much post-snap.
Right.
And I think that's something that I've been able to observe from these practices as well. And it's a very encouraging thing to see. And it's not a shot at Clark Lee. Clark Lee did a phenomenal job at Notre Dame. It's just different.
Yes.
And to me, it's the best way that when you get in those really big games, if you recruit the right kind of players and you get in those really big games, it's the best way to allow you to match up. But the other thing is it gives you more flexibility from a week-to-week standpoint when you play different types of teams. That's the other part is you can match up against North Carolina and USC one week who are going to spread the field and throw it. They're both air raids. USC is going to throw it 1,000,000 times. North Carolina is going to be more balanced. And you have to be flexible enough to defend them both. And then in between, then right before those teams, you're playing Wisconsin. Right. And then a few weeks after that, you're playing Navy. Mm-hmm. And to me, having this type of versatility built into your, to your core DNA as a defense makes it so much easier for you. Let's say you get to the playoff, and then one week you're playing Clemson, and they are a college spread team. They are a pure spread team. And then the next week you're playing Ohio State in the for the title, and they're more of a pro-style spread team. Or you're playing Alabama, and they're a pro-style offense. Or you're playing Oklahoma, and they're an air raid. They're 4 teams that are elite scoring teams, but they all attack really differently. Mm-hmm. When you have this kind of flexibility, it makes it so much easier to just kind of, okay, what are we doing this week against what they do? And that's what I really like about what we've seen so far from the defense, Vince.
Going into the spring, you and I talked about all kinds of different position battles, and there was a bunch. We're not going to rehash. There still are, and that's kind of where I want to go with this, Brian. I know you have talked to some sources, and you've been kind of in touch with some people. So I want to hit on a couple of those right now, if that works for you. Mm-hmm. Sure. Let's start at the cornerback position, because from what I'm able to gather, I think this one's still pretty wide open.
Oh yeah. Well, one thing we know about cornerback is Clarence Lewis is playing somewhere.
Yeah.
I think where Clarence is going to play might be determined by who else steps up.
Okay.
And we talked about this in a podcast last week, and I think that maybe some people understood it. Wow. Okay. It's been a long week already, and it's Tuesday. It's misunderstood to say, like, when we talk about, Tariq Bracy needs to step up and play well because he's their best cover player. That doesn't mean that Tariq Bracy is going to push Clarence Lewis out of the lineup.
Right.
It means that Tariq Bracy may play the field corner position, which frees you up to move Clarence to the boundary or the nickel, or maybe Tariq plays a nickel. But the reality is Tariq is a man cover guy. Clarence is a really good cover guy that is a different type of player. Not better, not worse. But again, I like the versatility of it. And that's why it's important those guys step up. When in regards to Tariq, it looks, we've seen in the videos, he's making some plays. He's getting beat at times, but you're going to get beat in practice. I've seen Julian Love. There was practices. I felt so bad for Julian Love in
he was getting
the
hammered
spring before 2018.
Yeah.
Miles Boykin was destroying him on the regular. I mean, it's just going to happen in practice, and especially when you're playing against really good receivers. He's going to get beat sometimes, but we're at least seeing a step up from him, thinking that, and I'm hearing it, he's getting back to the old Tariq. He's just got to keep that going and keep getting better. Cam Hart, it seems like they're working with him a lot. I mean, they're force feeding that thing into the equation. We haven't seen a ton of Philip Riley. I don't believe Ryan Barnes is practicing yet, but so there's still a lot to be determined there. But to me, I still view as Cam Hart and Tariq Bracy are the keys to this. Clarence Lewis is going to play somewhere, somehow, in some position.
Right.
And so he's not really in a position battle per se. He's just in a
He's one of the dominoes. He's a domino that needs to fall.
Yeah.
Well, other dominoes need to fall, but it's like we talked about with Jarrett Patterson, right?
Right.
We know
other
he's good.
Things have to get figured out.
Right.
Yeah. And like with Clarence, that's one thing I like about him. And that's one of the reasons I had him ranked higher than a lot of other folks coming out of high school, and why I wrote when he signed that of all the corners, he was the guy that I thought could be most ready to play because he's a really good football player. But he's not like a traditional boundary that Notre Dame has had in the past, the 6'2" guy or the big physical guy. But he can play in the boundary because I think he's a good cover player, especially as an off-man cover player, which I think you can take advantage of more in the boundary, as we saw with Julian Love.
Right, because you got help.
Julian Love hardly ever pressed.
Right, you've got help with the sideline.
Exactly.
Absolutely, yep.
And it's also because you have the will there. You have the
closer
Viper,
to
which drops in the coverage. There's a lot of different things you can do. Yes, it'd be great to have a boundary guy that could just come up and play press man all the time, but that you don't necessarily need to do that. And I think that Clarence's ability to press would be even more effective in the boundary than it would to the field.
Gotcha.
So anyway, I think he could certainly play that, but you're not going to move him there if you don't have guys stepping up to play the field in the slot corner position. So if Cam Hart plays great, then you could have Clarence playing one of those two spots. But if Cam Hart doesn't play well, or maybe you say, hey, you know what, we really want to go with a true 5-man personnel, we're going to put Cam Hart in the slot, and he's going to be that fifth starter there, because Tariq Bracy stepped up as the field corner, and then we're going to put Clarence in the boundary corner, because that's normally where you put your best corner.
Sure.
And right now, it's kind of hard to argue that Clarence Lewis right now is their best corner. So there's a lot of things there that have to be worked out, but so far so good is, I guess, what I would say with the other two guys is Cam Hart they need to throw the kitchen sink at Cam Hart this spring.
Agreed. This is the time to do it.
Right. And then coach him up on, okay, here's why you got beat.
Right.
Okay. And let him, he needs to see a million different types of routes this spring.
Yep.
Because the foundation has been laid. Hey, you're a corner, here's your footwork, but he's got to learn trial by fire.
Yep.
And number one, you need to see what kind of confidence he has. And number two, he needs to see those things. Hey, every time the guy did this, he beat me. So then I got to learn from it, adjust, and then not get beat that way anymore. And so but that means if they do that, and I hope that they are, it's going to mean that he's going to have some down days. But that's okay. That's how you learn.
Right.
And remember, Julian Love, the year before he was a consensus All-American, had a lot of down days in the spring because he could not cover Chase Claypool, and Miles Boykin.
And nobody could during the season either. No, so, it is what it is.
He was in good company. Right. Exactly. Exactly.
The one guy that you and I both had on our list of guys that needed to step up in order for the rest of the defense, specifically the safety position, to operate at its best was Houston Griffith. And for me, what I've seen on video has been solid. What are you hearing and what are you seeing from Houston Griffith and the safety position? DJ Brown was also a key to this. I mean, he needs to step up and really be solidly in that number 2 spot.
Guy,
He has to be that third guy. So what are you hearing? What are you seeing when it comes to the safety position?
Well, I think the things we were hoping to hear and see are so far what I'm hearing, which is the safeties are playing a lot more confidently, and they're taking full advantage of the fact that Kyle Hamilton's not practicing. And if you see in these clips, you're seeing Kyle Hamilton run off the sideline in T-shirt and shorts, clapping guys, cheering guys on. He's not practicing.
Exactly what you want to see, though, by the way. I mean,
correct.
I want him engaged mentally with the team and with everything else.
Correct. Which is that's a good point, Vince, because we talked about that before spring practice started, and that's great to see. He's very engaged, and you can be a leader when you're not taking reps. A, when you're as good as Kyle Hamilton. B, when you've already produced as much as Kyle Hamilton. And three, or C, A, B, and three. It's been a long week, man. A, and then C.
Sorry, that tickled me. I'm sorry.
And
that was
then
good.
C, he's the guy that you're now looking to as one of your veterans. And so you're looking at him as a leader. And so a guy like him with those three things going for him can lead from the sideline.
Right.
And we've talked about the benefits of him being locked into what's happening. So to see him as being the first guy off the sideline to cheer guys on is a great sign.
Yep.
But it's also been good for Houston and DJ to get that work. Litchfield Agevon's getting a lot of work. Justin Walters, the freshman, has showed up on several videos and making plays. So that's been good to see. But for Houston, it's about confidence, and it's about just playing free and playing loose. We're seeing that in videos, talking to people. It's gone well so far. He's encouraged by where he's going. He's got to catch a couple of those balls, though. He's breaking up. He's got to snatch those. But I like what I've seen so far from Houston in the highlights, and then what I'm hearing behind the scenes. It sounds like so far it's been, and that's really been what I've heard. I mean, it's a common theme of a lot of things I'm hearing, Vince, is it's a lot of so far so good.
Sure.
But you can just listen to the players talk in interviews, and you can sense when they're giving us the coached answer. Because they're coached very well before they go into these things.
No doubt.
And that's what I liked about the Adamiolas. We'll get into them in a minute. I mean, they were given some of those, but man, they were given some really fresh, like, hey, I'm a pretty good player, and I can do it. It sounds way more arrogant than they actually said it. We'll have a video up on it today at Irish Breakdown. We already had it up, so you can check it out. But it's just, you can just tell they're real confident and just real loose and easy. And we're seeing a lot of that from the defense. And just, it's not that it wasn't great under Clark Lee. It's just different.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference is there is sort of this aggressiveness. Like, hey, man, once you determine what your responsibility is, go do it 100 miles an hour.
Exactly.
That's this next step for this defense.
That's what I want on defense. Yeah.
Clark Lee did a great job with the foundations of the technique and he was great at that. But now I think Marcus Freeman can kind of come in and say, hey, let's take a couple of these cuffs off a little bit and just let you go run around and play. But the foundation of lining up correctly and assignment correctness and all that has already been laid by Clark Lee, and he's not eliminating that. He's not saying, hey, let's not be disciplined, let's not be sound technique, let's not line up correctly. He's not doing that. It's within that structure, there needs to be a little, it's a little organized chaos.
Yeah, sure.
And
defense.
You can't run his defense if it's always so structured. There needs to be some moving around and just hey, man, just go. All right, just go. If you decide that the B gap's your responsibility, if you're wrong, we'll correct it. But you better explode through that B gap 100 miles an hour. And that's what we're seeing more of. And we've definitely, Vince, in my opinion, to what you talked about earlier in the show, we're seeing the linebackers getting to the ball at or behind the line of scrimmage lot.
They're meeting the ball. They're meeting the ball so much faster, I think, than they did in the past. And again, it's not a knock on Clark Lee. It's a different feeling. It just looks like they're processing less and reacting more.
Right.
And that's what you want from a linebacker.
Vince, it's like comparing Bob Diaco to Clark Lee. Look, Bob Diaco did a great job. Clark Lee did a great job. Mike Elko did a great job. Marcus Freeman's going to do a great job. It's not just different. Let's just dispense with the whole. Anytime we say anything positively about Marcus Freeman, it's not a knock on Clark Lee. Clark Lee, we have both said the defense is why Notre Dame went 12-0 in 2018 and why they went 10-0 this year.
No question.
The defense is why Notre Dame has been to 2 of the last 3 playoffs. This isn't an anti-Clark Lee thing. It's just different. But it's as good as the defense has been. There is another level they need to get to, and that's why Marcus Freeman was hired. Yes. So let's stop with the. Well, this isn't a shot, but we had to say it. We both said it, but that's done now. Okay, so
good.
We're going to give our listeners the credit that they deserve, of the intellectual credit that they deserve, that they understand that we're not taking shots at Clark Lee.
Right.
The point, however, is in order to execute Marcus Freeman's defense the way that he wants to execute the defense, right? Not better, not worse, just different. There has to be that aggressiveness. And we broke this down before spring started when we did our how they linebackers fit into this defense. the linebackers at Cincinnati were far more productive at disruptive plays
just facts
than the Notre Dame guys were.
Yep.
Again, not better, not worse, just different.
Yeah.
So in order to carry out his defense, they have to play downhill. They have to play with their hair on fire. And we're seeing that. I mean, in those highlights that we had up earlier, I mean, I'm see if I can find if this is that practicing. Yeah, here we go. You're going to see Jack Kaiser in these clips. I mean, they throw a bubble screen and he is just there. That's Shane Simon right there, filling
and
hard.
We saw that in one game from Shane Simon. That was
right.
it.
But we've seen that now in multiple practices.
Right.
Where he's just flying downhill and the running back gets the ball, he takes a couple steps, and Shane Simon's right there in his face.
Right.
We've seen that plenty. We've seen that we were seeing Jack Kaiser. This is a bubble screen that Clarence Lewis blows up the corner. And the reason it's a long play is because they're not allowed to tackle.
Right.
But, here's another play. Bo Bauer filling hard. Tariq Bracy coming up. We see a play here coming up here soon where they throw another bubble screen. I think this might be it right here. Nope. It's going to come up here in a play or two where they throw a bubble screen and Jack Kaiser just blows it up. And he's clearly coming at it from a rover position. So that's another little interesting tidbit.
Yeah, we're going to get to that.
And that's what I like to see, Vince, is I like to see them attacking downhill, blowing things up. And now that there needs to be some soundness to it. You want to make sure that you're not being too aggressive, and then you're allowing the defense or the offense to bait you. This is the bubble screen. That's Jack Kaiser just blowing up, getting into the backfield. DJ Brown there to clean it up. Those are the things, Vince, that you have to be careful that you're not too aggressive, because then the offense can say, well, we're going to run this pump and we're going to throw it over your head, or we're going to hit RPOs behind you and all those kind of things. So, but that's what we say. It's organized chaos. It's structured chaos, right? With Clark Lee, it was structured aggressiveness, and that's different. That's fine, but it was more of read, react, get to the ball. This is more of a read, react, get to the ball, real fast. I mean, you've got to make your decisions real fast and then attack.
Yeah. And
it's much more an attacking type of defense than what we saw before. And in order to do that, the linebackers have to be very productive. And that's something we've said from the beginning. This is going to be a very linebacker-oriented defense. That doesn't mean the defensive backs aren't important. It doesn't mean that the defensive line is important. It just means if the linebackers don't play well in this defense, they are in trouble. In Clark Lee's defense, the safeties were asked to do so much that they could kind of protect the linebackers. In this structure, it's a lot harder to do that.
Right.
The linebackers are going to be asked to make a lot more plays.
So you kind of hinted at it with the Jack Kaiser at Rover reference. I do want to talk a little linebacker action here from more of a personnel standpoint. We broke down what we're seeing from a schematic standpoint, but more from a personnel standpoint. What are you hearing about guys in different positions and guys who are kind of standing out, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, just the big thing is, obviously Jack Kaiser playing a lot of rover. I think that's important.
Which I like that.
Yeah, and taking advantage of Paul Moala being out. I think the guy that right now is under the gun the most is Isaiah Pryor. He's got to prevent, if he wants to play this year in anything other than like an occasional rotational role, he needs to not let Jack Kaiser get a lot of distance between him and himself and Jack Kaiser, which is going to be hard to do because as you and I have talked a lot about Jack Kaiser's a really good football player.
Yeah, he is.
But then Paul Moala is going to come back, and Paul Moala is a really good football player.
Sure.
And Paul Moala is a little bit more versatile than Isaiah Pryor is. So it's going to be interesting to see how that battle goes. But Shane Simons really looked good. We're seeing Drew White and Bo Bauer playing a lot at the mic. I mean, there's not a lot of surprises, Vince, other than just Jack Kaiser playing rover. I mean, the Wills are who we thought they'd be. The Mikes are who we thought they'd be. A guy that's flashed in the videos, and again, this may not mean anything because we only get three minutes, but a guy that I've seen make a lot of plays in the videos is J.D. Bertrand, number 27. And I'm seeing him all flying around the ball. And I've heard some things about him in the past about how he was a smart up-and-coming player, like a slightly bigger version of Drew White kind of guy. We're seeing Osita Ekwonu get some snaps in these as well, which is good. So I like that they're developing that young depth, but right now it seems like it is what it kind of was personnel-wise going into the spring at the Mike and the Will. The big question, however, has been what would they do with Jack Kaiser? Well, that's been answered so far, and that is Jack Kaiser's been playing rover, which I like because that's just where I think he's best suited. I think he is such an athletic kid that you just need to give him more space to work with.
Sure.
And, he's kind of a mix of Drew Tranquill and he's not a mix. He's kind of right in between Drew Tranquill and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He's kind of got some of those inside linebacker instincts that Drew Tranquill had, but he's also more rangy and athletic than Drew Tranquill was.
Agreed. Yep.
He's a little bigger, I think, and able to take on blocks a little better than Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah could at the same age, but he's not quite as rangy and explosive as Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is. So I think that's why I say he's like right in between, and that's a pretty darn good football player.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Those guys are both really, really good.
Yeah.
And Drew Tranquill as a Rover in 2017 had 10 tackles for loss.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's an outstanding football player as well. So I like him there, and I think Jack Kaiser is going to be one of those guys that you just look at and say, man, where'd this guy come from? People say, 3-star guy, in-state guy, played 1A football, whatever.
Quarterback.
I don't care about that. The guy's a flipping football player, and that's what matters. And we're seeing that in these videos. I mean, he had the interception of he picked off Drew Pine in practice the other day. Or remember that one he hesitated and threw it? I believe that was Jack Kaiser that picked that off and took it back to the house.
And that was out deep in
the
flat,
6
too. I mean,
that was 6. Yeah, so that's been good to see.
I feel like Jack is the kind of linebacker that Marcus Freeman looks at and says, I need to find a way to get this guy in the field.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is versatile, he is athletic, he can play in space. You know what I mean? I just feel like any coach that walks into that linebacker room and then heads onto the practice field, Jack Kaiser is going to stand out. He just is. And so I wish I could say I was surprised that he's out there making plays and he's doing his thing. But I'm very happy that he's getting the opportunity. And
you just want an in-state kid to play. That's the reality. So you can say, look, Indiana football is better than all y'all thought because that's where you coached.
Either way,
is there, Vince?
Either way, you're looking at the Rover position. 2 out of the 3 guys are from Indiana.
True.
So just saying.
One's from South Bend or Granger.
Mishawaka, Granger, yeah, man.
Even better.
Absolutely.
Even better. No, you and we both graded him out as a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, Jack Kaiser. Yes. So this isn't a surprise. No, the only question was where would he be best suited? That was the only question I ever had. Is he a Rover or is he an inside guy? I think last year as an inside guy, he was very productive against South Florida, but I just don't think that's a position you want him playing for 75 snaps a game. But the fact that he can play it for 15 or 20 gives you a lot of flex. To your point about Coach Freeman, it gives you a lot of flexibility. I don't know how much you wanted to line up Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah inside. And they did it for that one game against BC, but that was a unique thing that BC hadn't prepared for. That's not something you're going to want to do week after week after week. You can do a little bit more of that with Jack Kaiser. And so I do like the versatility that he brings. And, of course, the big question now, Vince, is the ultimate difference between Notre Dame being really good on defense, which I expect them to be, and great on defense is going to be what happens up front. I mean, that ultimately is what's going to be the final decision maker here.
No, I agree. And I think there's talent. I think that there's versatility. Look, we knew kind of what we thought the depth chart was going to look like going into the spring, and the fact that it stayed that way, I'm fine with that. I really am, especially because of what I'm seeing from Shane Simon. And again, it's the 3-minute videos, but at the same time, man, he has made more plays in the 3-minute videos than I saw him make all last year. And I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being truthful. Those are facts. And so I'm really excited about what Shane Simon can bring to this defense if he's not hunkered down with his brain, because he is so athletic and he is also very versatile. I mean, you can do a lot of things with Shane Simon if he's doing what he needs to do to be productive on the field, and you can expand his role too. So I love Kaiser being on the field. I love seeing Simon make plays. I expect Drew White and Bo Bauer to make plays. That doesn't surprise me in any way. So, I mean, this linebacker group is exciting top to bottom. And I think they're getting coached well, and they were getting coached well before. And it's just, sometimes you just need a different voice. And for maybe that's for Shane Simon. I don't know. Get Jack Kaiser getting an opportunity. I absolutely love it. So, I'm excited where this group is headed.
And I think it fits their skills. I mean, they're long range guys. They're not thumpers. I think it fits their skill.
Yeah.
So that's it for me. I want to talk some D-line, Vince. Let's talk some D-line. I think that's an interesting thing for me.
Well, this is where you're going to see the most visual difference.
Yeah.
As far as lining up is
personnel-wise, no question. And we've seen a lot. We've seen Isaiah Foskey making plays. We've seen Jason Adamiola making plays. We've seen Kurt Hinish doing his thing. The encouraging thing for me has been we're seeing Nano Safa-Mensah flash in multiple practices.
We needed to see that.
And it maybe it doesn't manifest itself into 25, 35 snaps a game, but at least it could be something that gives the staff confidence. Like, look, next spring when Myron's gone and Justin's going into his 5th year, now all of a sudden he becomes a key part of the rotation. And then in 2022 or whatever, 23 or whatever, I mean, he now becomes a starter. That's encouraging because I liked him coming out of high school. I just
he was raw.
Is he a viper? At the time was a drop? Is he a drop? Is he a big guy? He's kind of got a drops body, but the game of a strong side is really what it boils down to. But then he was hurt this year as a redshirt freshman, and it just stunted his growth. So to see him coming off the ball quick, exploding off the ball, using his hands, beating, and a couple of snaps, he wasn't beating like the walk-on left tackle or something like that. He was beating Josh Lugg on one of those snaps.
Yeah.
We've seen Jordan Botelho flash as a pass rusher as well in a couple snaps, and so those are the things that you see. I think it might have been Tosh Baker that he beat, and then he beat Blake Fisher once, who we're hearing really good things about on offense. So I really like the fact that we're seeing Nana flash and make plays, and I hope he can continue to build that confidence and give them just another big body that they can go out there and go to battle with.
Well, and depth has been what has made this defensive line so good. And the fact that they're going to a 3-down look, I think is only going to help the depth a little bit because you're going to be able to rotate guys in there, but you're going to see some 4-down looks.
And the 3-down look is, again, they're going to base themselves out of a 4-down defense in 2021.
Right.
But our point is that they're just going to do a lot more 3-down than they have in the past. So the 4-down is still going to be the base of who they are. But if you don't have the versatility at the big end and the Viper to be in a 3-down out of your 4-down personnel, then what you're going to do for the offense is they're going to have a GA or somebody or running backs coach on the sideline, and they're basically going to yell out what Notre Dame's personnel is when they come out to a series, and then they're going to know what to expect. Whereas if you can come out in sort of a 4-3 personnel, which means 4-down linemen, 2 inside backers, and then your rovers like a Jack Kaiser, and then you can play a 3-3-5 behind that, it makes you so much more versatile.
Yep.
And, one of the things we talked about, like with Jordan Botelho, for example, and Isaiah Foskey's not this guy, but you look at Jordan Botelho, Will Schweitzer, the freshman, won't be doing that in 2021, but his skill set.
Right.
Those are guys that I thought could have played linebacker, especially Jordan Botelho. I was like, this guy could play Mike linebacker in college. Now, if a guy like him, when he's in the game, you really have some flexibility with what you can do. So that, to your point, that's why it's important these guys step up, because having these D tackles that can play 5 technique. So Jason Adamiola, Riley Mills, they can play 5 technique. We've seen them in drills in these videos playing 5 technique
against the Cans.
If they can't do that, then it makes it harder to be a 3-3, a team that lines up in a 3-down look. Same thing is true of the big ends. If the big ends, like if Justin Adamiola and Myron Tungavaloa, we know he can do it because he's done it for years. But in Nana, if those guys can not only play 7 and 9 techniques, which means lining up somewhere on the tackle, the tight end, if they can't also play in a 5 technique, which means over the tackle, even if there's a tight end in the game, then it makes you less flexible. You have to now sub your personnel to get into those looks, and that's where you start giving hey, look, so-and-so's in the game. That means they're going to be in this.
Sure.
And that's why it's important that those guys be able to establish that level of flexibility. More so, I'd say that's probably a better word than diversity. It's just being flexible within your job, being able to do all the different things that you're going to be asked to do. The more guys that can do it all, it's like we talked, it's great that Marcus Freeman's defense is such that he can take a guy that's more of a niche player and use him there. But it's always better if you have guys who can do a lot of different things.
Sure. No question.
Then you don't have to sub. Then you can do all of it, and it just makes you harder to prepare for.
And that's a key, Brian, because there's going to be teams that want to go tempo on you, and they're going to want to be fast. And if you don't have to sub, that just makes you that much better on defense because you're not worried about getting packages in and out.
Right.
You can just change on the fly. You can go from a 3 front to a 4 front to, you can do all of these different things.
Now you can start messing with the offense too, Vince.
Absolutely.
It's not just, the tempo part's like 0.1, right? That's 0.1. You have to be able to handle tempo because a lot of teams are going to do that now. And if you can't handle tempo, or if you're a team that has to sub as much as we're talking about in this example of guys can only do like one thing really well,
right?
Then they say, hey, look, we got them on first down. Like they came out and they're in this personnel that we want to attack. So guess what? Immediately that's being yelled up to the offensive coordinator. Well, not yelled up. It's not high school. It's being talked into the mic. Hey, look, they're in, so-and-so's on the field, or they're in this personnel. Right. And maybe it's not the personnel grouping, but of certain players on the field that is a niche player. Hey, this guy's on the field. We have a package that we want to attack him with. Correct. Let's go tempo so they can't get him off the field.
Right.
Next thing you know, they ran 5 plays on you and, for 75 yards and a touchdown in like 47 seconds.
Yeah.
Of game time. That's kind of where you can get yourself in some trouble against tempo teams. But if you have enough flexibility at other places, then you can then protect that guy.
Yep.
And so that's what we talk. That's why when we focus on this versatility and this flexibility within the structure of the system itself, but then having players that can then do multiple things,
right,
is the difference between you have a really good defense and you have an elite defense that can help you win championships. And that's what we're seeing. And it's easier to do that in the secondary at linebacker. I think what makes this Notre Dame roster different, and why I have said, and it's probably an unfair statement to make because of how good recent defensive lines have been, but it's why I've said I think this could end up being Notre Dame's best defensive line. Again, it's a long way to go, and that may be an unfair projection because that 2018 defensive line was so good.
Right.
Last year's defensive line was so good. The 2012 and the 2015 defensive lines were so good. But I like the bodies that this group can throw, but it's also that flexibility. This is a far more versatile group of players than what even the 2018 line was.
Right.
And that's something that I really like. Not that what the 2018 defense could have been, it's what it was. Like Jerry Tillery could have played 5 tech. Jerry Tillery would have been a monster in this defense.
Sure.
He was pretty flipping good in Clark Lee's defense. It's just what he wasn't asked to do some of that stuff. But there were times when he'd play over 5 technique. But I think that's what I like about this defense is it does fit. The nice thing is yes, it's a defensive coordinator is going to fit his system around what the players can do. But it's better when a new defensive coordinator steps into a system and inherits a roster that has guys that fit what he does already. And I think that's the unique thing about what Notre Dame has built defensively is this is going to be and we talked about this early in the spring, Vince, this is going to be a smooth transition for a lot of Notre Dame players because they already kind of fit. And in fact, some of these guys are going to be enhanced because of the change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I get excited about this defense as a chance to be even better than what it's been in recent years, which is pretty freaking good.
I was going to say the bar is already very
incredibly high. If you're a top 25 defense this year, if you're Marcus Freeman, it's like, he wasn't as good as Clark Lee.
Right.
If you're a top 20 defense, it may, last year's team, last couple games took a bit of a step back, but Notre Dame the last 3 years, in my opinion, just overall has been a top 10 to 12 defense.
Mm-hmm.
That's the standard. Now we're talking about, can Marcus Freeman take them to that next level, that top 5, that top 3, to where they're truly an elite defense, which then starts taking some of the pressure off the offense's need to score 45 points a game, which is what, or 40 points a game, which is what a lot of people are doing. It's going to be hard to do that against the Bamas and the Clemsons, but that's what they're going to have to do unless the offense can figure it out. And sounds like it's at least starting to figure that out. At least Brian Kelly's starting to figure out that's needed.
See. And I just want to be clear, Brian, this defense has been a championship caliber defense for a while
3 years.
Now. 3 years at least, right? So this has been just the offense has lagged behind. And if the offense can get even closer, this defense has the chance to be even better next year and moving forward, which is saying a lot because they have been championship caliber. But if they take that next step and the offense can get just take another step, Now, we want the offense to take more than just another step. But if the offense can take another step, the defense takes another step, they're going to be that much more dangerous.
Yeah,
this is going to be a great team.
The offense needs to take like 5 steps.
They do.
But to your point about the defense, Notre Dame's defense has been good enough to win a championship if you can have an offense that's as good as some of those other teams.
Correct.
I don't think the defense has been good enough to win you a championship. And that's where we're coming from, because the reality is the Notre Dame offense is so much further away than those teams. The defense has to be even better. And that's the pressure that's on this group.
Yeah.
And it gets down to, okay, can you force more turnovers? Can you make more negative plays? Can you do the things that can get that offense off the field, which for a half against Clemson in 2018, they did. They did just that. It wasn't until Julian Love got hurt and Clemson scored 2 touchdowns in a minute and a half that broke that game open. It was a 93 game when Julian Love got hurt.
Right.
And they were harassing. Harassing Trevor Lawrence the whole first half. Clemson couldn't really get the run game going. They couldn't get the vertical passing game going. They had a break where they recovered a fumble, and they had a couple big plays here and there, which they're going to get. But again, to do that for 60 minutes is impossible.
Right.
At least the way that they've played. And so that's what we talk about is they got to get, if they want to get to that elite level where maybe they can win a championship with defense because they're able to force turnovers and things like that.
Right.
Then there's another level to get to. I think the key is that if the offense can get on the level that the defense is now, then Notre Dame's going to be really, they can win a championship.
No doubt.
If the defense can get even to that an even better level, then that's going to make it even more exciting and make the margin for error on offense even wider, because right now the margin for error on defense even wider if the offense can take those steps.
Exactly.
Because then the defense doesn't have to be perfect. You're beating Louisville 12-7. That's not because of the offense, right?
No,
you're scoring 27 points against Duke, 31 against Georgia Tech. Those are mediocre scoring numbers against those teams. Now, based on what, you listened to the podcast yesterday, Vince, you heard the comments that Brian Kelly made. I'm encouraged by those comments to a degree. Part of me says, why did it take you this long to figure that out? We've been talking about this for 2 years.
Right.
But whatever. I'm just glad that he made it. What's funny is some of the reactions to it. Like, the funny part about what he said, though, and I didn't talk about this in the show because I tried to keep that positive, but it's his comment about, well, we knew we had a really good offensive line and quarterbacks, and to see some people just eat that up like, well, yeah, that's why that was even more reason to be a better,
yes.
You know what I mean?
Because you had the veteran leadership that you needed in the playing.
Whatever. The key point is that he figures it out.
Yes,
and it sounds like
when he started talking about. Yeah, when he started talking about the fact that, hey, we need to focus on scoring more points, that's what the spring and the fall is going to be all about. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're standing up giving we're clapping. We're all excited. Like, thank you. You finally figured it out.
Now, he's got to put his money where his mouth is. Right. We need to see it, obviously.
We have seen some of the stuff. We saw the RPO the other day.
We did.
And I have confirmed it was not an April Fool's joke geared towards us. They are actually doing some RPOs in practice. They're throwing a mess load of deep balls in practice, which we've seen on the videos. And
yes, they have.
And so those are the things that are encouraging to see. Now, will he go kind of halfway, or is it all in now? Hey, we got to score 40 plus a game. And I hope that it is. I hope that he looks at it and says, you know what, man, you know how I got to Notre Dame? You know what got me here? This is what got me here.
Exactly.
We're going to push the tempo. We're going to be explosive. We're going to be innovative, and we're going to score a mess load of points. And I hope he goes back then. I don't care what. And look, the guys in Indy Nation are going to criticize Brian Kelly no matter what he does. Right? He could win a title, and it's, well, he didn't win by as many points in the championship game as the Wolves won against West Virginia, so it doesn't count.
Right. It counts.
Like, some people are just not going to give him credit no matter what. That's just the reality of it. But if he really wants to win over the 99.9% of the fan base that are actually sane and rational, then the way to do that is to win a championship. Right. And the way to win a championship is to get into the modern game and go back to being the guy that got you here. Brian Kelly didn't get here because he was a ball control, conservative, ground and pound coach. He was never that guy.
That's right.
That's not why he won 2 back-to-back national championships at Grand Valley State while averaging over 50 points per game.
Right.
And he would have won 3 straight championships if Kurt Ains doesn't get hurt. And I think it was a second-round playoff game of the 2001 season. That might have been his best team. but the quarterback got hurt.
Right.
And then the coach that led Cincinnati to almost 40 points a game in an era where that meant they ranked 4th. I think Cincinnati ranked 4th in scoring in 2009 in Brian Kelly's last year at Cincinnati. I'm actually going to look that up now. I'm pretty sure that's where they ranked. So 2009, Cincinnati ranked 4th. And there was only one Power 5 team that would have been ahead of them. That was Texas. Houston and Boise State were at 42.2 each. Texas was at 39.3, and Cincinnati was at 38.6. That was back in 2009. This year, 38.6 ranks 15th.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a little bit different.
But the point is
46, 47, 48 range. You're not going to be
the rules have changed since 2009, which adds even the ability to score even more points.
Right.
But the point is, Brian Kelly, and keep in mind, he also lost a starting quarterback for 4 games that year too. And so the point is, Brian Kelly got here because of being that guy. Now, I love the fact that the defense has been built up, but the good news is hey, look, the defense is already there. Just maintain what you're doing. Yep. But if Marcus Freeman gets him even better, and maybe they can force more turnovers or maybe make more negative plays,
right?
And the offense takes a jump, where maybe they can score 27 to 30 points in a playoff game against Clemson or Alabama.
Right.
That could be good enough to get it done.
Agreed.
Or if the defense can just make a big play or two to force a turnover or two, now you can get up to 34 and win the game.
The offense capitalizes on it.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. So that's the exciting thing. So anyway, so that's going to do it for today's podcast. Vince, I got some good news. You and I were talking today. You will be back on the live, the live mailbag podcast on Friday. So I'm very excited about that. It was not nearly as much fun without you.
It's my favorite day of the week, man.
So you're going to have to go talk to your upcoming Friday baseball opponents, and you're going to have to do some rescheduling of those games because we can't have you not on the live podcast anymore, man. We got to have you there. So anyway, that's going to do it for today's show. Vince DeDario, thank you for being with us today.
Absolutely.
That's our football analyst at Blue and Gold Illustrated. I'm Bryan Driskell. If you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button if you're listening on YouTube and hit that notifications bell. Share this podcast so that way other Notre Dame fans can have a chance to see it. If you're listening on a podcast, make sure you subscribe to the Irish Breakdown podcast on whatever platform you use. Give us a 5-star rating. We would greatly appreciate that. And of course, as always, check out our content at irishbreakdown.com. So for Vince and the entire Irish Breakdown staff, because it's now not just me and you,
us. Vince. It's not just us. That's right.
Thank you for being with us. Have a great, great rest of your week. And as always, we will talk to you again very, very soon.